The stars began to die, and the Zythelians learned how to beg. They drifted at the edge of the Milky Way, their crystalline bodies flickering with the last embers of a fading bioluminescence. Genetic rust gnawed at their cores, turning their once iridescent skin to brittle ash. In their ships' archives, holograms of their homeworld played on loop, a planet of luminous forests and rivers of liquid light, now swallowed by the same decay. Their scientists had scoured the galaxy for salvation, parsing DNA like ancient poetry, until they found a species whose genetic chaos mirrored their own ordered collapse. Homo sapiens, fragile, adaptive, brimming with paradox. The first child was taken from a rain-soaked field in Kerala, her laughter still hanging in the air when the harvest pod sealed. The Zythelians did not relish the cruelty. They hummed mourning hymns as they inserted the symbionts into her spine, their six-fingered hands trembling. She survived 3 cycles, longer than most, her bones shifting to opalescent latticework before the rust found her. They named her vessel 01 Kiri and etched her neural patterns into the chorus, where her terror would linger as a ghost note. More followed, a boy from Montreal plucked mid-snowball fight, twins in Nairobi, still clutching their mother's scarf. The Zythelians told themselves it was necessity, not malice, that the children's screams were the price of cosmic balance. But in the quiet between experiments, their ascendants gazed at Earth's blue-green orb and wondered if they'd misread the oldest law of survival, that a species willing to devour another to live has already gone extinct. By the time the humans noticed, by the time their primitive telescopes traced the missing to Ganymede's ice, the Zythelians had already begun to dream in the voices of the stolen. And in those dreams, the children wept diamonds. Chapter 1. The sky cracked open on a Tuesday. Torin Veles was fixing the solar array on his rooftop when the first shadow fell, a jagged, prismatic bruise splitting the clouds. His hands froze mid-wire splice. The air thrummed, a subsonic pulse rattling his ribs. He knew that sound, not the industrial growl of Earth's freighters or the metallic shriek of Martian drills, but something colder, sharper, a sound that had haunted his nightmares for 23 years. They're back. The Zythelians descended like shards of stained glass, their ships fracturing the sunlight into spectral blades. Torin's pulse roared in his ears. His daughter, Liren, was at school 3 blocks west. He leapt down the fire escape, his boots skidding on rusted metal, the old enhancements in his muscles flaring, a phantom burn where alien circuitry had once fused with his bones. The streets were chaos, screaming crowds, hovercars veering into buildings, the sky a kaleidoscope of crystalline hulls. A harvest pod detached from the nearest ship, its surface rippling like mercury. It struck the ground with a sound like breaking teeth. He ran, past the smoldering remains of a noodle cart, past a toddler wailing beside a body half buried in rubble. The school's gates were twisted open, hinges sheared clean. Inside, the halls reeked of ozone and burnt plastic. Glass crunched underfoot. Classroom doors hung ajar, desks overturned, holographic lesson plans flickering in the dust. Liren, his voice cracked, no answer. In the gymnasium, he found the pod's aftermath, a crater scorched into the floor, the air shimmering with residual energy. Tiny sneakers littered the edges, pink ones with comet patches. Liren's. Torin fell to his knees, gravel biting through his pants. The pod's heat had fused the sneakers to the concrete. He pried one free, the rubber sole melting against his palm. Failed hybrid, the words slithered into his mind, venomous and familiar. The Zythelians had hissed them as they ejected him from their labs, his adolescent body convulsing, veins glowing toxic green, useless. Now clutching his daughter's shoe, Torin vomited onto the rubble. Location: EDC Headquarters, Geneva Bunker. General Orvin Hest's office was a tomb of steel and shadows. Maps of the solar system glowed on the walls, red pins marking every abduction site, Tokyo, Nairobi, New Montreal. Torin sat rigid in a chair too small for his frame, Liren's sneaker digging into his thigh. The general paced, his augmented eye flickering with data streams. "We've traced their staging area," Hest said. "Ganymede's southern ice plains. They're tunneling into the moon's crust." Torin stared at the man's prosthetic hand, the joints whirring faintly. "You've never seen their labs, never felt your bones crack as they force their tech into you." "They're building something," Hest continued. "A fortress, maybe. We need you to decode their systems." A hologram flared between them, the Crucible, its spires clawing at Ganymede's sky. Bioluminescent veins pulsed across its surface, a grotesque hybrid of flesh and machinery. Torin's skull throbbed. He had seen that architecture before, in his nightmares, in the half-remembered screams of children dissolving into crystal. "You want me to crawl back into their wiring," Torin said flatly. Hest leaned forward, his human eye bloodshot. "They took my grandson, too." Silence pooled in the room. Torin's enhancements hummed, a dissonant chord beneath his skin. He thought of Liren's laugh, how it trilled like wind chimes, how her tiny hands would press against his chest when nightmares woke her, as if she could physically hold his broken pieces together. "I'll do it," he said, "but I laid the strike team." Location: Torin's apartment, Berlin sprawl. Midnight, Torin stood under the broken showerhead, water sluicing over the scars that lattice-worked his torso, thin, silvery lines where Zythelian probes had burrowed into him. The enhancements had left marks deeper than skin, migraines that split his vision into fractals, moments when his hands moved faster than his mind, disjointed and lethal. He dried off and knelt beside Liren's bed. Her pillow still smelled like strawberry shampoo. Stuffed animals lay in a heap, their button eyes gleaming in the dark. Torin pressed his forehead to the mattress. The memories came unbidden. Cold, always cold in the labs. The Zythelians' touch like frostbite, their voices buzzing through the implants in his jaw. Subject 09 Torin, neural rejection imminent. A girl in the adjacent pod, dark hair, missing front tooth, screaming as her skin crystallized. They'd flushed her corpse out the airlock. He had watched it spiral into the void, glittering. He had survived, not because he was stronger, but because his body had revolted violently enough to amuse them. A flawed specimen, a toy to discard. Now he opened the floor safe hidden beneath Liren's rug. Inside, a pulse pistol, a vial of black market neuroinhibitors, and a holodisc labeled Aurora. He slotted the disc into his wrist terminal. A woman flickered to life, dark curls, Liren's dimples, his wife, or what remained of her after the first abduction wave. "Don't watch this unless," Myra's hologram laughed wetly. "Hell, you'll know when." She had recorded it 8 years ago, minutes before running toward a harvest pod to buy their neighbors time. They'd never found her body. Torin swallowed a neuroinhibitor, the bitter gel coating his tongue. The migraines receded, leaving his mind raw. He strapped the pistol to his thigh. "You'll get her back," Myra whispered in his memory. "You're the only one who can." Location: ADC negotiation site, Ganymede's orbit. The diplomat's shuttle was a gilded coffin. Torin watched through the viewport as it docked with the Zythelian emissary's vessel, a jagged spire wreathed in violet plasma. The EDC's envoys wore crisp white suits, their helmets reflecting the sterile light. Fools, they still believed in words. Hest stood beside him on the observation deck, jaw clenched. "If they refuse." "They'll refuse," Torin said. "The Zythelians didn't negotiate, they harvested." The emissary's ship disgorged a single figure, a Zythelian female, her crystalline skin iridescent, bioluminescent veins pulsing cobalt. She floated toward the shuttle, unarmed, her face a mask of serene indifference. Torin's enhancements spiked, his vision blurring at the edges. He saw double, the emissary here now, and a memory of his captor, her six-fingered hand gripping his jaw as she injected something searing into his neck. "You will be more," she had hissed, "or you will be nothing." On the view screen, the emissary raised her hand. The diplomats lined forward, eager. Light erupted, the shuttle vaporized, a sunspot blooming silently in the dark. Hest cursed, alarms wailed. Torin turned away, his reflection fractured in the polyglass. War, he thought, finally. Location, EDC War Room, Geneva Bunker. They gave him a team, Kessa Droth, a pilot with a cybernetic spine and a permanent sneer, Jerk Vin, a medic who still believed in saints and second chances, 6 others, their faces blurred by tactical helmets. Torin studied the Crucible's schematics, the hologram casting sickly green light over the room. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the neuroinhibitors wearing off. The Zythelian architecture writhed in his mind, corridors folding into themselves, airlocks sighing like living lungs. Hest handed him a mission patch, Earth's crest stitched over a fractured star. Bring them home. Torin pinned it to his chest. He didn't mention the whispers he had started hearing, not memories, but something new, a choir of voices humming in the static between stars. The echoing chorus his enhancements supplied. He wasn't sure how he knew. As the team boarded the dropship, Torin glanced at the sky one last time. Somewhere beyond the stratosphere, Lyran was drowning in alien light. Hold on, he thought, the words a blade in his throat. I'm coming. The engines roared, the stars blurred, and the fractured sky swallowed them whole. Chapter 2. The dropship shuddered as it pierced Ganymede's thin atmosphere, its hull groaning under the weight of alien static. Torin pressed his palm to the viewport, watching ice plains unfurl below, a vast, desolate white etched with jagged obsidian spires. The Crucible rose among them, a cathedral of living bone and circuitry, its spires throbbing with bioluminescence. Kessa cursed under her breath, her cybernetic spine clicking as she wrestled the controls. Thermals are spiking, she muttered. That thing's breathing. Torin said nothing. His enhancements prickled, a swarm of wasps beneath his skin. The closer they flew, the louder the voices grew, whispers in a language he shouldn't understand, syllables like fractured glass, echoing chorus. The names surfaced from some dark corner of his memory, a half-remembered nightmare. They landed in the shadow of a spire, the ship's engines coughing black smoke. Jerk handed out respirators, his fingers lingering on the medkit strapped to his thighs. Air's toxic, he said, though they all knew the real poison was the light, the sickly violet glow radiating from the Crucible's pores. Torin stepped onto the ice. The cold bit through his boots, sharp as Zythelian scalpels. Above, the sky was a feverish indigo, Jupiter's storm eye glaring down. The fortress loomed ahead, its arched entrance a yawning mouth lined with crystalline teeth. They built this place to be eaten, he thought, or to eat us. Location, the Crucible's threshold. The walls pulsed, rib-like struts curved overhead, dripping viscous fluid that sizzled where it struck the floor. Torin's team moved in formation, pulse rifles scanning for heat signatures, but the air was empty, too empty. No guards, no drones, only the thrum of machinery and the occasional drip of acid. Kessa kicked a shard of crystal. Trap. Worse, Torin said. Invitation. His enhancements flared, painting the corridor in overlays only he could see, faint trails of bioluminescent residue, the ghostly imprints of small feet, children's feet. He followed them, his breath fogging the respirator. The walls whispered. Subject 09 Torin, welcome home. They found the first hybrid in a chamber veined with glowing capillaries. a boy, no older than 10, suspended in a gel-filled pod. His skin had transmuted to translucent crystal, organs visible beneath, pulsing masses of alien tech fused with flesh. One eye remained human, brown and wide and terrified. Jerk stumbled back. God, they're turning them into batteries. Hosts, Torin said. His voice sounded distant, drowned by the roar of his own blood. The boy's crystalline hand twitched, reaching. Torin's enhancements translated the motion. Help, hurt, mother. Kessa raised her rifle. Should we end it? Torin gripped her barrel, forcing it down. He is alive. Barely. They moved on. The pods multiplied, dozens, hundreds, each child a grotesque masterpiece of fusion. Some had wings of razor-thin crystal, others limbs replaced by thrashing tendrils of light. Many were dead, their bodies petrified mid-scream. Torin's skull throbbed. The voices crescendoed, a dirge of overlapping pleas. Save us, kill us, remember us. Location, the heart chamber. The central vault took Torin's breath away. A colossal heart hung suspended, its chambers pumping not blood but liquid light. Arcs of energy leapt from its surface, feeding into conduits that snaked through the walls. Beneath it, a pool of glowing fluid churned, its surface littered with floating bodies, children in various stages of transformation. Liren was among them. Torin's legs gave out. She floated face up, her curls fanned out like a halo, skin marbled with veins of cobalt. Her left arm had crystallized entirely, fingers tapered into shards, but her eyes were still hazel, still human, still his. Dad, her voice echoed, warped by the fluid in her lungs. He waded into the pool. The liquid burned, dissolving his boots, eating through his pants. He didn't care. When he reached her, her crystallized hand cut his palm. He held her anyway. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here. Her human fingers brushed his cheek. They're sad. Ahoo! The song, can't you hear it? He could, the chorus swelled, no longer whispers, but a harmony so vast it threatened to unmake him. Grief, hunger, desperation. The Sci-fiTales' song wasn't a war cry, it was a requiem. Kessa's shout shattered the moment. Veli's movement above. Sci-fiTales emerged from the vault's shadows, their crystalline bodies refracting the heartlight into spears of color. They didn't attack. They knelt at the pool's edge, six-fingered hands pressed to their chests. Mourners. One spoke, its voice vibrating through Torin's implants. You were the first to survive, the first to carry the song. Help us save them. Memories detonated, a Sci-fiTales scientist cradling a hybrid's corpse, her bioluminescence dimming to gray. A data stream flickering, genetic rust epidemic. Extinction imminent, children screaming as symbionts burrowed into their spines. You're dying, Torin said. The Sci-fiTales bowed its head. We chose your species for resilience, for empathy, you would understand. Jerk stepped forward, medkit open. We can help, if you just asked. The Sci-fiTales hissed, a sound like steam on ice. Your kind burns what it fears. Torin looked at Liren, at the way her crystalline veins pulsed in time with his own scars. The truth was a knife. Both species were parasites, one devouring flesh, the other devouring futures. We're taking the children, he said. The Sci-fiTales rose. The heart's light turned crimson. Location, the reactor core. Chaos pulse fire lit the vault in strobic bursts. Kessa dragged Liren from the pool while Jerk lobbed grenades at the heart. The Sci-fiTales didn't fight. They threw themselves into the blasts, their shattering bodies fueling the reactor. It's overclocking, Kessa yelled. This whole place'll blow. Torin fought through the haze of pain. His enhancements were failing, synapses misfiring. He glimpsed the reactor's core through the chaos, a knot of writhing light, vulnerable. Jerk grabbed his arm. I can fry it with a EMP charge, but you'll fry yourself too, Torin finished. The medic smiled, bitter. What the saints made martyrs for right. For a heartbeat, Torin saw Myra in the man's face, that same stubborn tilt of the chin. He nodded. Jerk ran, the Zythelians converged, but Kessa's covering fire carved a path. The reactor flared, its light blinding. Torin clutched Liren to his chest, her half-crystallized body shuddering. The explosion was silent. A sphere of darkness swallowed the heart, the vault, the screams. Then gravity inverted. Torin slammed into a wall, Liren's weight tearing at his arms. The crucible screamed, a metallic, organic wail. The chorus shrieked in his mind, 1,000 voices unraveling. Failed, failed, failed. Location, the fractured halls. Retreat was a blur. The halls buckled, flesh-like walls sloughing off to reveal steel skeletons. Kessa led the way, her cybernetics sparking. The surviving hybrids, 6 in total, clung to the soldiers, their mixed breaths fogging the air. Liren stirred in Torin's arms. Dad, the song's changing. He heard it, the chorus wasn't gone, it was inside him now, a cancer of borrowed memories. Zythelian children dissolving into rust, human children gasping as alien tech overwrote their DNA. A choice, extinction or atrocity. They reached the dropship as the Crucible's spires collapsed. Kessa fired the engines, her hands steady. EDC fleets inbound, will make the rendezvous. Torin stared at the crumbling fortress. Amid the debris, a Zythelian child stood, partially transformed, one human eye weeping. It raised a hand, not in threat but farewell. The gene bomb, Torin realized, the Zythelians' last gambit. The fleet wouldn't understand, wouldn't care. Liren pressed her crystallized fingers to his chest. You hear them too, don't you? He did, and in the hollow where his rage had lived, something new took root, a terrible, fragile hope. The dropship lurched skyward. Below, the Crucible's heart went dark. Chapter 3. The Voidbreaker hung in the black like a tombstone. Torin stood at the flagship's observation deck, his reflection splintered across the polyglass. Behind him, Earth's armada buzzed, fighters, destroyers, salvage rigs retrofitted with artillery. Ahead, the Zythelian fleet shimmered, their ships like shattered mirrors catching fire. Ganymede's pale disk bisected the void, pockmarked with the ruins of the Crucible. His body was betraying him. Crystalline growth spiderwebbed from his collarbone, tiny fractals creeping toward his jaw. The neuroinhibitors had stopped working hours ago. Now every breath felt like swallowing glass. The echoing chorus had become a constant murmur, a river of alien grief eroding his mind. He pressed a hand to the viewport. Cold seeped into his palm, a fleeting anchor. Liren. She lay in the medbay below, her small frame cocooned in stasis gel. The EDC surgeons had stabilized her, stopped the transformation they claimed, but her right arm remained crystalline and her left eye glowed cobalt.
This story continues. Subscribe to our channel, like the video, and listen to the rest.